Welcome to the Polygamer podcast, where gaming is for everyone. Join us as we expand the boundaries of the gaming community.
Hello, I'm your host Ken Gagne, and welcome to this week's Polygamer. I hope everybody is having a lovely autumn. As I mentioned on a previous episode, there are so many gaming conventions happening at this time of year. By the time you hear this, it is September 30th, which means we're about a month behind from PAX Prime, which I chose not to go to, and the Boston Festival of Indie Games, which I did go to at MIT in Cambridge. I had a great time playing a bunch of indie games and looking forward to playing them further on my podcast dedicated to indie gaming, IndieCider.net. But more relevant to Polygamer are two other upcoming conventions. One is GX3, formerly known as GamerX, which will be held December 11th to the 13th in the San Jose Convention Center in California. I'm thrilled to announce that I will be attending GamerX. This will be my first time in the event's 3 years, although I have backed it all 3 years on Kickstarter. Not only that, but I'm honored to be moderating a panel called Unheard Voices, which is about diversity in gaming podcasting, why we do it, and how you can get started. I'm honored to be joined on this panel by several other individuals who are renowned names in this space, including Tanya DePass from I Need Diverse Games and Fresh Out of Tokens, Sean Alexander Allen of New Challenger, one of the very first guests of Polygamer, and Anna Tarkov of Unconsolable. We're hoping to add additional guests to the lineup as well, so stay tuned. You can get your tickets for this event at GamerX.com. They are still on sale. If you want to hear more about GX3, which was announced after Matt Kahn appeared on Polygamer, I refer you to the recent episode of the Less Than or Equal podcast on which he appeared, making him the very first guest to ever appear on both Polygamer and Less Than or Equal, although my inside scoop tells me there will be another such individual coming up in October. Unfortunately, going to GamerX meant that was my one trip to the West Coast this year, and I had to pass on PAX Prime, and I'm especially regretful to miss the convention that is the subject of this week's Polygamer, that being GeekGirlCon. The 4th annual GeekGirlCon will be held October 10th to the 11th, 2015 in Seattle, Washington, and tickets are now on sale at GeekGirlCon.com. As the name implies, this is a convention that, from their FAQ, works to empower women and girls to pursue their passions, whether they love science, technology, comics, literature, gaming, or anything else. Everybody is a geek at heart in one way or another. Our mission is to ensure all these geeks are supported, welcomed, and encouraged to pursue what they love. What makes this convention different from other events is their belief that conventions and conferences should include content for less represented identities, and in their case they choose to focus on the contributions of women. Although I've never attended this event, I confess to a slight bias because Polygamer would not exist had I not been given the opportunity to host a podcast on sex, sexy, and sexism, fixing gender inequality in gaming at PAX East 2014. That is where all this got started. In fact, I originally conceived of Polygamer as a podcast all about feminism. So to know that there is a convention out there that is creating a safe space for women is just super exciting. Since their FAQ is so exhaustive as to how and why this convention exists, I refer you to that website, geekgirlcon.com/FAQs, rather than have this week's guest retread that ground for us. I hope you enjoyed this week's interview. I certainly did, and if you do, feel free to let your friends know by emailing or tweeting them, following us on Twitter, where our handle is Gamebits, or on Facebook or Google+, where our handle is Gamebits TV, or leaving a review in iTunes. There's so much that you can do to help advance causes such as GeekGirlCon, and I hope that if you are not able to attend the event, which you totally should, that you do whatever you can to get the word out about their event and this show. So thanks so much for listening. I look forward to bringing you more great interviews in future episodes of Polygamer. Today I'm honored to be speaking with two representatives from GeekGirlCon, which is occurring this October 10th and 11th, 2015 in Seattle, Washington. Joining me first of all is the manager of gaming, Alyssa Jones. Hello, Alyssa.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Wonderful. And remind me, what does a manager of gaming do?
So I am kind of the ringleader for the entire game team. I have an incredible staff of 3 others who work tirelessly to coordinate our tabletop hosts, our tournaments, and our RPGs, as well as all of the volunteer operations during the con. Because we are an all-volunteer organization, we do end up wearing many hats. So this year I was lucky to also get my hands a little bit dirty and do the workshops and console gaming as well. Typically, my stuff is a little bit more high level. I'm responsible for the overall game floor scope, securing sponsorship, and coordinating with other departments. all the boring stuff.
Doesn't sound boring at all. And also on the line, we have the Public Relations Manager for GeekGirlCon, Danielle Gahl. Hello, Danielle.
Hi, Ken. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good.
And how long have you been involved with GeekGirlCon?
I have been an attendee for 2 years, and I have been here for a month.
Wow, and you just skipped right to the top of the corporate ladder as Public Relations Manager.
Thank you. I feel quite accomplished as well.
Well, they are very lucky to have you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So I'll be speaking primarily with Alyssa today, but Danielle, feel free to jump in anytime.
Of course.
So Alyssa, how did you get involved with GeekGirlCon?
So the first time I ever heard about GeekGirlCon, I was actually attending a different convention. And in the madness of the convention, forgot about it completely. And then the following January, one of my coworkers actually found some job listings for the game department and forwarded them on to me and said, I think that you would be really great for this. So I applied, and that January 2012, I started on as the game floor coordinator for the second convention. Shortly after that con, the director of gaming retired, and I took over for her, and I've been there ever since.
So in your years of involvement with the event, how have you seen it change or grow?
It's certainly gotten a lot bigger. We are starting to kind of branch out, get recognition outside of Seattle, which means we've gotten a lot more submissions. Every year we get more exhibitors, more panel submissions, more workshop submissions, which means we get to put a lot of thought into selecting our panels. And in the end, I think that means more voices, more diversity, and an overall higher quality con.
What is the expected attendance for this year?
Oh, gosh. That is a great question.
We're actually expecting probably around 5,000 people this year.
Oh, that's a good number. I've been to MagFest, and that is, I think, about that size, maybe a little bit bigger or smaller. And I'm looking forward to going to my first GamerX this year, but these are a very different scale from PAX, which is just a carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking forward to the more intimate experience of GamerX.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's sort of the vibe you're going for as well, as far as scale goes.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't know if you're familiar with the show Community, but remember that episode where there was like the blanket fort versus the pillow fort?
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely a pillow fort sort of philosophy, I think, behind GeekGirlCon, where we're really trying to create like a good solid wall, comfy space.
I like that. So attendees feel comfortable and safe.
Mm-hmm. Comfortable and safe, and like the walls will not fall down with a paper clip.
So who would you say is the target audience for GeekGirlCon? Obviously, you want everybody who does come to be safe, but who do you want to come?
So our mission basically states that we celebrate the accomplishments of women and girls in all of our geeky fields. So really anyone who wants to celebrate that with us is welcome. We welcome people from all ranges of geekiness.
So no geek cred is required to participate.
I don't need to show my geek card at the door?
No, you don't. In fact, some of us don't have it really. Our cards are sad, to say the least. So it's definitely for everyone who just wants to get involved. And so it's a nice starter con for people too.
I think just the fact that you're attending an event called GeekGirlCon sort of establishes your cred right there.
Absolutely.
So that means that I can go to this event and nobody's going to bat an eye. A straight white cisgendered male is going to fit right in.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so how does that make it different from GamerX? Because their mission is also to create a safe space. They started by focusing on the LGBT community and its allies, which is why the event was called GamerX. Now they've rebranded as GX3 with the slogan, Gaming is for everyone. So they too want to create a safe space, and you'll find Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn at GamerX, either this year or in past years. How is that different from GeekGirlCon?
I would say our focus still is on the accomplishments of women, and in that way it does make it a little bit different. But we do work very closely with GamerX, or have before in the past, so I would say we do share a lot of our kind of core values. I don't know, Danielle, do you have anything to add?
No, actually, I think you said it perfectly. I think all conventions who are sort of geared towards diversifying and inclusion, one of the things we're all striving to do is really continue to grow and diversify and change who we are as an organization. And we're always growing. And I think because of that, you're going to see that shift occur. And so places like GamerX are going to start to shift. We're going to start to shift because we really are trying to create a truly inclusive community. Because I think a lot of times if we sort of say like, oh, we're GeekGirlCon and this is only for girls, well, then, it really not only ostracizes some of our allies, but also people who are gender fluid or who are neuro or, are intersex. And so there's really this whole spectrum of people who we really want to feel safe and welcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. It sounds like a wonderful, inviting community.
Yeah, I think so too.
I've spoken with the founder of GamerX on this podcast, also most recently the founder of the Diversity Room or the Diversity Lounge at PAX, and I asked them if they've gotten any sort of criticisms or pushbacks from elements of the gaming community who are not so inclusive. And the response seemed to be that those individuals don't seek out those spaces. Like if you create a safe space, then you're sort of saying that people who are not open to being inclusive are not welcome and they don't show up. And so you don't get a lot of harassment from troglodytes and the like at those events. Has that been the case at GeekGirlCon? Have you been successful at establishing a safe space, or does every now and then somebody infiltrate your ranks?
Honestly, over the years I've never seen anybody cause any trouble at the con. One of the nice things about creating a community where you're really adamant about your values is that the community actually becomes self-regulatory. And so even if there was some off comment, I think our attendees would actually be super great at kind of shutting that down, being like, hey, this is a safe space. That's not cool here. But for the most part, honestly, like we have seen a disproportionate amount of support and encouragement from all of our attendees, panelists, volunteers, everything. So yeah, it's been really great.
Right. Well, and also, we're a celebration, and so it does attract a different sort of group. But also, we do take things seriously, and we do have a full security team that is trained and ready to go in case of anything, and that a response team if somebody has a complaint or if they feel like they're being harassed or if they're feeling like the space is no longer safe. We have a full team that is ready to respond to that and takes it really seriously.
Even leading up to the event, looking on Twitter, maybe its algorithm is being selective of what it shows me, but looking at people who are talking about or to GeekGirlCon on Twitter, it all seems very encouraging and very supportive.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also our social media team, if I can just give them a little shout out, they are wonderful at sort of recognizing when people are not being kind and supportive and really making sure that they report any kind of harassment to Twitter as well. So, those types of things, like making sure that you report that kind of harassment is important as well. So I think that they deserve a lot of credit for also sort of being vigilant at making sure that tag stays safe.
So tell me a little bit about the programming, the lineup, and the content of GeekGirlCon. One of my favorite elements of any gaming convention are the panels, and it sounds like you are going to have some great ones at this event. What sort of panels might I find at GeekGirlCon that I would be unlikely to find elsewhere?
We've got a ton of stuff lined up, specifically gaming ones. Stuff that I'm really excited about is the Ladies Who Let's Play. That would be, I think, a really unique take on the hugely popular Let's Play kind of phenomenon. Other panels, related to gaming, there's going to be like how to make a tabletop game, workshops for kids that code. I'm super biased towards all the gaming ones. Danielle, are there any ones that you can think of?
Yes. I'm actually really excited about the stuff this year. Some of the things that I'm really excited about are the Geek Girl Scouts that are coming in. So the Girl Scouts of Western Washington are running their own table, and they're going to be doing RPGs and running tabletops. And I think that's a really awesome thing to get to showcase. Also, I think one of the things that you're going to see at GeekGirlCon that you maybe wouldn't see at another con would be panels that are specifically geared towards an audience that's open to the critical analysis of the media that we are actually consuming. So there's like diversity in speculative fiction and romance, and there's things about how not to be an NPC and what the difference between sexy and sexism is. And I think you're not going to see that at every con.
So you mean at GeekGirlCon I can actually talk about representations of women in games without people thinking I hate the games?
Absolutely.
What a revelation.
Well, and you can also talk about things like, there's a focus on queer representation. There's a focus on disability politics. There's, so it's more than, and also there's just sort of silly things as well. Like, well, not silly, but awesome science things. Like there's going to be a panel on the poisons they use in Game of Thrones. So, how you get to engage in your media is pretty exciting with GeekGirlCon, I think.
And that's an important thing to point out. I struggle with balancing on this podcast discussing both serious topics and fun topics because the reason we're into gaming is because it's fun. And GeekGirlCon has the full breadth and range. It's not always analyzing, diversity in speculative fiction. It's also like what's great about media.
Mm-hmm. Right. And one of the panels we have this year is actually how to engage and enjoy problematic media, which I'm actually really excited to see.
That sounds awesome. Are these panels recorded and made available online at all?
Oh, that's a dream. That's definitely a dream we have. Not this year, and hopefully in the future it can be something that we can aspire to, because that would be wonderful to be able to share this kind of information, I think.
Right, because even just now when I was looking at tweets aimed at you, there were a few individuals saying that they would love to attend the event, but travel is difficult, and that's the case for me as well. I was able to make one West Coast trip this year, and I chose to go to Gamer X, which is going to be this December, and I would love to go to GeekGirlCon as well, but in lieu of that, I would love to see the panels on YouTube. I know how hard that can be. I used to be responsible for recording all the media at a different convention that was in Kansas City, and it's so easy to fall behind on editing and producing these films. It's not just click record and then click upload.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And even if it was, you still have to get all the equipment and get people to run it.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things, I don't know if you know this about our organization, but we are 100% volunteer run. So, Alicia has a full-time job outside of this. I have a full-time job outside of this. We're all doing this because it's a part of our hearts. And and it's a pretty big con to put on as a volunteer.
Wow. So even with as highfalutin a title as public relations manager, that's still just a volunteer position?
That is 100% volunteer.
Wow. You must be a very busy person.
Well, you should talk to Alicia. She's really, really busy. And our executive director, board of directors, everyone, we're all free. We are all 100% free.
You mentioned Game of Thrones and speculative fiction. It's also worth emphasizing that GeekGirlCon, it's not Gaming GirlCon, it's GeekGirlCon. So you discuss all matters of sci-fi and fantasy, not just gaming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've got everything that you could ever want in the geekdom. Gaming, obviously, we've got STEM, comic books, popular media, anything that you love as a geek, we all love too. And we want to make sure that our con represents the geekdom.
It almost sounds like what Comic-Con has grown into. It's beyond just the name of comics. It's all aspects of geekdom. And I understand that's even where the idea for GeekGirlCon originated, was at the 2010 Comic-Con, I think.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Except, of course, Comic-Con is its own sort of carnival, as I mentioned, with hundreds of thousands of attendees. I don't know that I would ever want to go to that event.
Oh, well, then can I tell you a little bit about our Introvert Alley?
Ooh, yes, please.
Yes, we actually have a space that is just for people to sort of de-con for a little bit, where it's quiet. It's a space just to sort of take some downtime. So we call that the Introvert Alley. We also have a family room where people can go with their kids and just relax for a little while in there. It's breastfeeding friendly. We have a DIY science zone that's really great to be able to take families to, and young children as well, because it's hands-on and it's nice for people that also aren't wanting necessarily to go for panels and things like that, and just experience sort of the carnival that is like getting to see people in cosplay and things like that as well. So I've taken my 5 and 2-year-old every year or so.
The Introvert Alley sounds like a subset of the AFK room that I've seen at other conventions. You're familiar with those?
I am not. Are you?
I haven't, no.
Oh, they're run by this wonderful organization called Take This.
Mm-hmm.
They are a nonprofit with charged with the mission of advocating for mental health in the gaming industry and bringing out into the open the mental health issues, which can be found in any industry, but which gamers may have unique opportunities to address through the media of gaming.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, I highly recommend them. You can find their website at takethis.org, and there will be a link in the show notes. I believe that they represent themselves at every single PAX around the world, and as their organization grows, I would love to see them at additional cons as well.
Definitely.
It sounds like it'd be a great fit.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. You mentioned a lot of the stuff that the con has to offer. There are some I want to mention specifically, but since we have the manager of gaming here, tell us about the show floor. Like, is this sort of a console free play where people can sit down and play games, or is it more of an exhibitor area where publishers and developers show off upcoming games?
So the game floor has three different main elements. It's our console gaming, our tabletop gaming, and our workshops. I'll start. So tabletop gaming, we invite a bunch of local gaming companies to come and actually teach people how to play their games. That can be games that have already come out and games that have yet to be released. We actually this year have a huge playtesting section where con attendees can go and check out games that have not yet been published and kind of provide feedback and help in the development of these new games. We also have a tabletop, checkout zone with just a massive amounts of board games. Some of them provided by Mox Boarding House, where people can check them out. We'll have a lot of free play space for people. We have RPGs with Andy, which is a fantastic experience. Everyone at the con should try at least once, especially if you're new to RPGs. Our console gaming area is going to be a little bit different than we've done in the past years. We want to really encourage community. And so what we're going to try to do is have more like a curated experience where we work together in order to try to accomplish a goal. So for example, we'll have a Super Smash group activity where everyone tries to work together to be like a level 9 NPC or something. Instead of because console gaming can be a little bit isolating. So we're trying to really make it a group community event. And then last, workshops, we have a lot of really cool ones. I mentioned the teaching kids how to code workshop. That'll be running all con long in our lower level 1 room. And that'll take kids and adults through a process of coding without actually using any computers. It'll be a really fun kind of experiment for people. And then we've also got our paint and take from Privateer Press. They'll be supplying us a bunch of miniatures and teaching people how to paint miniatures. I think that's everything. We've got a couple tournaments, but I've already went on for a really long time. So,
how does one code without computers?
So it's a cool company called Color Code by Phenomenon Media. They, as far as I can understand, I haven't gotten my hands on it quite yet, but they've got strips of paper that represent different commands. And kids can kind of rearrange them and order them, and they will kind of replicate what that would look like on screen. It's really cool. They really gamified it. It takes only about 20 minutes to run through, and at the end of it, you'll have like a shell of a website built.
Wow, that's a lot of fun. This really is a family-friendly environment. I mean, if you're new to coding, that sounds like a fun way to learn. Or if you just want to introduce kids to the concepts, that would also be a great way.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah, that's one thing I haven't seen a lot of at the larger conventions I've gone to is families. There are a few, like a dad will bring his daughter, and sometimes she'll be dressed up as a little Princess Leia or something. But on the whole, it's not really a family event. Boston Fig, the Boston Festival of Indie Games, that's an exception. That's a very family-friendly environment because all the kids love to get their hands on the games, and that's mostly what the event is. But stuff like PAX and even MagFest seems to be geared for ages 18 and up.
Absolutely. And I will just say that you will see the cutest cosplay of little kids at GeekGirlCon than at any other con. I guarantee it.
I can't wait to see the photo gallery.
Yeah, actually, the year before last, we had a stroller. Somebody had a stroller that was geared up so it actually looked like a spaceship. It was it was very cool.
I love cosplay. I love it when they take so much time to get all the details just right, and it really pays off when they show up at the event.
Mm-hmm.
Just looking at your tweets right now, I think I noticed that Emma Bell, who is a cosplayer out of Vancouver and who's been on this podcast, is going to be at GeekGirlCon, and that itself is almost reason for me to go. I wish I could.
Well, we would love to have you.
Thank you. I hope to make it there another day.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hear you mention a couple of the offerings this year that sound really fascinating. One is called the Geek Girl Connections Rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me about that?
Absolutely. So, actually, Connections is one of my favorite places in the con. It's a place where we can connect our attendees with representatives from different industries and universities, in hopes to create kind of mentorship opportunities. In a way, it's a little bit like a career fair, where there'll be folks that we can network with, get career advice, get some resume pointers even. And this year we have a really cool lineup. There'll be folks from NASA, from Real Girls, from F5 Networks, and Girl Scouts. It's going to be a really great place.
Yeah, looking at the lineup on the website, you have the ACLU, First Robotics, the Living Computer Museum, which is great. I have a relationship with them for another entity I represent, Juice GS. Okay. Since that's a special interest of mine, Living Computer Museum, what is the appeal of bringing them to GeekGirlCon? Because they focus on really old computers, and if this is a family-friendly event, these computers might be older than your attendees.
That's true. I think wherever industry you end up with, knowing the history of that industry is super important and can really help spark an interest. So, and who knows, maybe like the career fair is not just for young people starting out their careers, right? It's for people who have maybe been in the industry and are looking for a change or looking for the next step. So it really the range is wide. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm an adjunct faculty professor, and I teach my students the very first 2 weeks about the history of computers and the internet, because even though they're not historians, I want them to know that there's a reason things became the way they are. We didn't just roll out of bed one morning and have the internet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the opposite end of that extreme, though, is the spectacle of the Kids React video. There was one about a year ago where they showed kids an Apple II computer from the early 80s. And I mean, I love the Apple II, but on one hand, I think it was sort of torture to just throw kids at this without any context or instruction and have them hope to figure out how to work it. Made for a fun video, but I'm not sure the kids really appreciated it like they should have.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. Geek Girl Connections, that sounds awesome. I also understand this year, first time ever, not just a cosplay competition, but also a fashion show. Mm-hmm. Tell me about the fashion show.
So this is our first annual fashion show, and it's in conjunction with Espionage Cosmetics and the Pacific Northwest Fatitude. And our goal is to highlight how empowering it is to kind of have geeky fashion. It's going to be really cool. There's going to be tons of swag. The first 100 people will get a swag bag with stuff from Her Universe, Think Geek, Insert Coin clothing, like a whole bunch of stuff. And then there'll also be raffle tickets for a grand prize at the end. Yeah. It's one thing I did want to mention, actually. It's like everything we do, we're trying to represent a lot of different people in this. So it'll be very diverse, very inclusive, because that's kind of one of our core values.
And so what exactly does that mean in the context of a fashion show? Does that mean having fall, winter, spring, and autumn outfits?
I think it means more like the folks that are going to be in it will be different ethnicity, different sizes, different gender identities, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think especially the different sizes is important, because I don't think that's something you see at these catwalks that a lot of fashion creators and dictators like to put on.
Yeah, we won't have any actual models. They'll all be volunteers. So our hope is that everyone up there will represent somebody in our audience.
I'm curious about the fashion show, because this goes back, I think, to what was stated earlier in the show about the difference between sexy and sexism. There is a important movement across all conventions to for attendees to understand that cosplay is not consent. And the GeekGirlCon's code of conduct expands that to say attire is not consent, which is very important. I'm sure that there are some people who may be confused to say, well, wait, if we're supposed to be looking beyond the surface into more of the substance and appreciate people for who they are on the inside, how does that jive with having a fashion show which celebrates superficiality? Now, again, this is not my perspective, but I'm sure there are critics out there, or at least people who are confused, who are trying to reconcile attire is not consent and at the same time a fashion show. Is that something you can speak to? Or am I being a little bit too provocative?
Yeah, I'll let the PR person take that one.
Yeah, no, I'd love to take that one. Actually, I think that, and I understand that sometimes people do get confused that women and people in general are complex characters, because we are. I like to wear a good set of lipsticks, but at the same time, I also want to work on the computer and do coding for fun. It's just, I think it just goes a little bit into the idea that, all people are. This is a provocative question. Let me see if I can word it right. I think one of the things that I would probably say about our fashion show is that, we're trying to say that it is an inclusive event because it may seem like something that's superficial, but the thing is that being geeky and being into your brain doesn't mean that you can't also be into having awesome gear that showcases your fandom. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And this extends beyond just, of course, a fashion show, because I've read some wonderful articles, including by Maddie Myers, that suggest that the gaming industry has an implied dress code where if you're not dressed like a guy, then you're going to stand out and you're going to get some unwanted attention. So I've read stories from women who feel that they need to go to a con dressed in jeans and a t-shirt, even though that's not what they usually wear, because they want to fit in. And I think it sounds like your fashion show is sort of trying to address that.
Well, yeah, and also, we can rock some polka dots and still be excited about geekness, I think. And I think maybe that is something that we, as being part of GeekGirlCon, we have that freedom to do too. Because fitting in at GeekGirlCon is a lot easier because we're inclusive.
Which is wonderful, and I think a lot of places may think they're inclusive, but they don't go to the lengths of having an excellent code of conduct like you do, or even having any code of conduct at all, and then following through with that at the event by having events like these and all the safe spaces you've created. I mean, obviously the event itself is a safe space, but you go out of your way to also have the Introvert Alley and places like that, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. As long as we're on adversarial subjects. No, I'm just kidding. I am curious about some of the panels, not any one in particular, but there was a great article that Anna McGill tweeted recently about how conventions need to move beyond having just diversity panels, like women in games or ethnicity in science fiction and the like. And I understand her point, and I think sort of these feminism and diversity 101 topics are still important at more broader focused events like PAX, but GeekGirlCon has the opportunity to go deeper. So what is the need for 101 panels? Like if somebody's attending their first GeekGirlCon, is there still a need for them to would they still benefit from going to, say, a women in gaming event, or have we moved beyond that and we're ready to talk about something else now?
I would say that there's absolutely a benefit for those things. When I first heard about GeekGirlCon, like what drew me to it was its geekiness, not necessarily any of the social issues. And honestly, I really wasn't familiar with the misogyny and the issues of diversity that are in the gaming industry. And so I really benefited from those panels, even though I had been gaming my whole life. So I would say there's still a need for those kind of entry-level things, and then we kind of try to move past that, and then we're like the fast track, I guess. You do your 101, and then you've got the rest of the con to kind of go deeper and deeper.
And I noticed that one of the ways you're going deeper this year is by pushing for intersectionality. Can you give us a brief primer on what that means?
Yeah, so our strategy for that is one, first, to be super clear that intersectionality is a big factor in who we are. Like one of our core values is we are the world. So inclusivity is part of who we are. And then two, we proactively try to seek out specific groups or organizations that offer unique points of view, kind of like able gamers or Black girl nerds, and reach out to them and try to encourage them to have a representation at our convention. And then we take all of the feedback that we get from our panelists and attendees very seriously and try to work to continue to include intersectionality as one of the big things.
Do you reach out to these organizations to come to GeekGirlCon, or do you put out an open call and they approach you?
A little bit of both. We've got a lot of connections. Our social media team is really great about reaching out and making connections and starting conversations. And then we kind of have our big open submission, and if we see a couple people missing, we might ping them. But yeah.
Right. And also, just to piggyback on what Alyssa was saying in terms of that, when we see something missing, especially with the feedback that we get from our attendees and our panelists and our community, whenever they say, hey, we really were missing this, or this was something that was overrepresented or underrepresented and things like that, that's an opportunity for us to really strive to grow and to change. And that's where we can say, hey, let's really focus our attentions on making sure that we're filling these gaps. And so the community itself is really important in terms of changing and making the space and the panels more diverse and exciting.
It sounds like GeekGirlCon is very responsive to attendee feedback.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll say that for sure too. I know that when I was first hired on, that was the first thing I went through was all of the attendees' suggestions, because I feel like that's where you can really sort of start to be reflective. Because a lot of times when you're in an event and you're doing the event, you only see what you're doing and you don't necessarily see those things that you don't know you have blinders for. And so I think that it's a great way for them to help us as well.
How do you go about soliciting that feedback? Do you have a post-event survey that attendees can fill out?
We do. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also I know that one of them was one that, and Alyssa, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this as somebody who was an attendee, is that people came up to us after the con and asked us questions during the con as well. Mm-hmm. So we did have that. Because I know that, I know someone came up I was cosplaying at the time with my daughter, and somebody came up and asked us for our feedback, and they wanted some information on how to make the con more family friendly.
Who were you cosplaying as?
I was Effie Trinket, and my daughter was Katniss Everdeen.
Aw, may I ask how old she is?
She's 5. She was 4 at the time, so
oh my
she was
goodness.
A very tiny and very crabby Katniss.
This sounds adorable.
It was adorable because she scowls all the time, so it was kind of the perfect costume for her anyway. The photographers would be like, "Could you smile?" And she would be like, "No, that's not my character."
It's true though; she doesn't smile.
Exactly. She took that very seriously.
What a good little cosplayer.
Oh, she was great at it. Yeah, this year I think there's probably going to be a little Elsa and Anna action. There may be some Greek goddesses.
Oh my gosh. Wow, so I was right. You are a very busy person. So I still am curious about the diversity panels because there are individuals who suggest that simply attending PAX validates it when it doesn't need that, and speaking at it is even worse. But I justify going to PAX by doing panels on equality and diversity and saying this is the audience that needs to hear this based on other incidences that have occurred at PAX. GeekGirlCon, though, and this is the same issue I face with this podcast, I sometimes feel like I'm preaching to the choir. People who are listening to this show are already on our side. They're already allies. So who is the audience for diversity panels at GeekGirlCon? Do you feel like you're preaching to the choir?
I would say that one of our main draws is kind of just our geekiness. And again, like when I first heard about GeekGirlCon, wasn't really into the social justice aspect of it at all. So I think that, in a sense, we are kind of helping to inform a new group of people. And it is such a safe place that people will hopefully bring friends, and those friends aren't necessarily in on all the issues that we're trying to bring light to. Mm-hmm.
Well, and also, if I can piggyback on what Alyssa was saying, is I think that one of the benefits of diversity panels, obviously in other cons, and then with GeekGirlCon, thinking about preaching to the choir, I think just by existing, so things like GX3 and GeekGirlCon, one of the things is that just by existing, we are changing the culture of other cons. Because we are here and we're being fully inclusive versus utilizing a type of tokenism, I think that you can sort of say like, oh, well, this is working for them. They're selling out every year. And so cons that are there for profit are going to be able to say, well, obviously this is a demographic that we're not hitting. This is, somebody who we're not selling to. Let's see what we can do to bring them into our convention. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You're setting an example. It was the same thing with that Kansas City convention that I mentioned. I was attending for 18 years in a row, and they never once had a code of conduct because their philosophy was, we've never had a problem before, we don't need one. We don't want to post one and have people think that there was a reason why we needed to post it. But, I finally convinced them, or I think I was a small voice in a larger conversation, that it's not just about having a code of conduct for your specific event. It's about picking sides and joining the side of conventions that say, collectively, this is not tolerated at any convention, and we want to set the example.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because it is about leading by example. Because if we want to be celebratory and we want representation to look different than it does in the current culture, we have to sort of model what we want that to be. And so, hey, what better way than to put on your own convention that's totally awesome?
Exactly. Now, let's say that I'm not a social justice warrior. I'm just a gamer. I love my games. I want to go hang out with some other gamers. Can I go to GeekGirlCon and just cosplay, play some games, hang out, and not get any of this diversity crap shoved down my throat?
Yeah, I would say you probably could. You're going to see it because it's in our programming booklet, first page, what these are our expectations of you as an attendee. But I mean, if you're just there to have fun, we've got so much stuff for you. We've got the paint and take, we've got free play, we've got console gaming. There's the DIY science zone where you can go and do fun little science experiments. There's so much stuff that is just purely for fun that if you want to put your blinders on and not see any of that stuff, you could still have a good time.
Right.
Awesome.
Well, and I venture to say that social justice warriorness is just we get to, this is fun. Doing all of this is just, it's awesome. It's not necessarily a political thing to be able to walk into a space that feels safe. That's just a nice feeling for anybody. So you can be a cisgendered white male coming in and playing your games, and you're going to have an awesome time. You're also going to see some people who don't look like you, which will mean that you have a more awesome time because you'll get some new perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. If you really do go to this convention with your blinders on, you're missing out on half the fun.
Mm-hmm, exactly, which is that diversity is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much diversity in your program and in your lineup. I'm surprised you're able to cram it all into just 2 days. Have you thought about expanding?
There's always talk about it. We'll see. I can't say anything officially. There's pros and cons to doing it 2 days and 3 days, but it's always part of the discussion.
Just being a fully run volunteer organization, expansion has to be really careful and measured because we can't go beyond the abilities of really all of our volunteers.
At a certain point, when you want to talk about expansion, you also have to talk about the resources that are available and expanding those resources, and that can mean hiking up the price on tickets, which can make it not as safe a space because you want to invite financial diversity too. You want to make the con affordable.
Mm-hmm. And we are a screaming deal, Ken. It's only $45 for 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
And tickets are still on sale. This is one of those things where you have to be sitting at your computer the 5 minutes they go on sale.
Exactly. They are still on sale, but we are expecting to sell out. So get them now.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yes. Another form of expansion, I assume this falls under the same umbrella as a longer con, is also different locations, having like GeekGirlCon East and West or GeekGirlCon Spring and Fall. Is that something that you've also discussed internally?
I think it is for sure. We're probably a little ways away from that. I think if we're going to expand space-wise, we would probably first start to grow within the Seattle conference room or center. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all pipe dream, but really, like, we probably don't have the bandwidth at this point to be able to expand on that level. However, I'm sure if there's a GeekGirlCon East that would like to participate in a conversation, we would be happy to have that conversation.
Well, I would be happy to nominate Boston. It looks like we're not going to be hosting the Olympics after all, so we have some space.
Well, you tell those GeekGirlCons of Boston to give us a call, and if nothing else, we can give them some guidelines.
Well, next time I attend the monthly Women in Games Boston meetup, I will be sure to bring that up.
Awesome.
So, as I mentioned, your website has a ton of great resources, the FAQ, the code of conduct, and regular blog posts about things that are going to be happening at the event coming up. One thing I found on your website, which in my limited experience is somewhat unusual, is a full staff directory with headshots and bios. For example, I can name 3 people who are associated with PAX. PAX has so many people involved with it that maybe they just figure it's not even worth mentioning who they are. And same thing with MagFest, to be honest. I'm not really sure who runs MagFest, but GeekGirlCon, I can, if I wanted to, name every one of you and go to the con and identify you and say, like, oh my god, you're Danielle Gahl. I saw you on the website. You're amazing. And yet, nowadays on the internet, especially in the last year or so, a lot of people have come to understand the value of privacy and anonymity. And so I'm curious about what the thought process was that went into deciding to create this online staff directory and what you thought the benefit to doing so might be.
That's a really great question. It's actually not something I have thought about before. I guess I would say that we kind of want our attendees to know who we are. We want them to know that we do represent them and that we're proud of our geekiness, right? We want to raise that flag and be proud. And we also want to create community with them. We are 100% volunteer. And so I think it's really important that they know who we are, while still hopefully protecting our staff.
Yeah, no, I think that you put it perfectly. Is that, yeah, it's something that this is like GeekGirlCon is as a celebration. We're not a LLC. We are a 501c3, and so one of the ways that I think that we hold ourselves accountable and form that community is by being very transparent. And obviously, this is one of the ways that we are. Is that this is who we are. This is what we're doing. And if you don't see yourself represented on that staff page, then hey, give us a shout out and let's see what we can do to change that.
Awesome. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on at GeekGirlCon, a lot of different elements to it, but it is about the fun, and I want to know what each of you is looking forward to the most about GeekGirlCon, whether it's a specific panel, a game that you want to play, whether it's an upcoming game, or just getting to hang with your homies and play Magic the Gathering. What are you looking forward to?
2 things. One, that moment where I realize everything on the floor is okay and we're going to be okay and all the hard work is come to fruition, I guess to say. But as far as an event, there's actually a panel coming up called The Couple That Games Together. And it's about how gaming can be a really positive, have a positive effect on your relationships. And that especially rings true to me because I actually met my fiance in World of Warcraft.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks. And gaming really kept us together. So I'm really excited to see that, meet some new gaming couples, and maybe learn some cool games to play.
Yeah, the gaming as a couple is something that I've seen discussed at other panels that Tifa Robles or Susan Arndt were on, and it's also something I discussed on this podcast with Alyssa Melendez. I don't know if any of them are going to be at your event, but Tifa Robles of the Lady Planeswalker Society is certainly in your neighborhood.
Yeah, but she's actually her and her husband will be on the panel.
Ah, wonderful. They are excellent speakers. I can't recommend them enough.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And at least from my point of view, I'm just really excited to get to participate in the con. Obviously, from a different side of it. But I love the DIY science zone. It is so much fun, and getting to see, and it's not just for kids, it's for grown-ups too, getting to participate in hands-on science while you're at the con, and sort of getting to participate in that way, I think is a really rich experience. And I think it's great to be able to see female scientists who are running these types of things. And and of course, I always love seeing the cosplay, because it's so much fun to be able to see what people come up with and how creative people are. Like last year, I saw a woman who was dressed as the Impala from Supernatural, and she had just took it into a really impressive way, because she was dressed like a car, but she wasn't dressed like a car. And so it was just, all of her details were just spot on. It was really impressive.
But for someone who has less talent than that, like me, I can just go in my jeans and t-shirt and have a good time.
Yeah, you can go in your jeans and t-shirt. Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe not be in the fashion show, but...
But you could probably find something that you would like to get when you're at the fashion show.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, I hadn't thought of that.
And I promise you, we're going to have some awesome pictures of the fashion show, so that you will be able to see everything that was showcased, so that you can really get a good visual for it. So hopefully we'll get some good coverage from press on that, so that it will be everywhere and everyone will be able to see how wonderful geek fashion can really be.
Mm-hmm.
Good, because my closet could use an overhaul. Unfortunately, in that sense, I fit the stereotype of a geek, and I need something besides just jeans and t-shirts to wear.
Hey, don't be dissing on jeans and t-shirt. It's a uniform for a reason. It can be a really solid wardrobe choice.
There's also a reason why this is an audio podcast instead of video. I'm not feeling my prettiest today. I'm sure you two would put the smack down on me, but... Awesome. So GeekGirlCon is October 10th to the 11th, 2015 in Seattle, Washington. Tickets are on sale now on the event's website at geekgirlcon.com. Is there anything else you two would like to chat about before we wrap up?
I think I'm good, but thank you so much for having us on the show today, Ken.
Yeah. Do either of you have Twitter handles you want to share with our listeners?
Sure. You can follow me at Lyss D Jones. It's LYSS Jones.
I never tweet. I'm so boring. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry, what was your handle?
I don't tweet. Yeah,
Oh.
so I have a handle. It's just my name, Danielle Gahl, but you'll never see anything on it, which is very sad. I'm on Tumblr all the time, and I ain't giving that information out.
Fascinating that the director of public relations would not be active on Twitter.
No, I'm active on Tumblr, but not on Twitter.
So do you have somebody else running the GeekGirlCon Twitter account?
Yeah, actually, we have a full social media team that takes care of all of the social media aspect, because it'd be too much for one person to be able to take on. So we actually have, is it 2 or 3 people who run social media? I think it's just 2 right now.
2 right now, yeah.
One of the benefits of having such a wide and diverse and supportive cast and crew is you get to delegate.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody gets to do their one thing really well.
Wonderful. Well, Alyssa Jones, Manager of Gaming, and Danielle Gahl, Public Relations Manager for GeekGirlCon. I've enjoyed the last hour. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I hope the con is a great success.
Thanks.
This has been Polygamer, a Gamebits production. Find more episodes, read our blog, or send feedback at polygamer.net.
I was telling somebody I was going to be interviewing Alyssa Jones, and they said, "Oh, from Chasing Amy?"
Right?
I mean, I saw the movie once 20 years ago. I didn't get the reference, but then I thought, I'm sure she hears that all the time.
Yep. Someday I will pass her on Google. I will. I'll be the first result.
You go, girl. That's the dream. Live the dream.
That's right.